Good morning and welcome to the pre-application conference for the Academic Quality and Early Childhood Grants. Before we get started, if you could please type into the question box and let me know that you can hear me, I would greatly appreciate it. Great, so it looks like you guys can hear me. We are going to go ahead and get started. My name is Rhonda Kardash. I am the Director of the Office of Public Charter School Financing and Support, and I am going to be leading this webinar today. Before we get started with the actual webinar, a few housekeeping items. You all can see that there is a question box in front of you. If throughout this webinar you have any questions, please go ahead and type them into the question box. I do have everyone on mute in order to cut down on background noise. I will stop periodically throughout the course of the webinar to answer any questions that come up. I also want to let everyone know that at the close of this webinar, the slide deck will be sent out along with the performance measures document. And if any questions come up that need answering in the form of an email, those will also be included in the email that goes out at the close of the webinar. This webinar is also being recorded and will be posted on our website if anyone wants to view it again or needs someone else in their organization to view it. So once again, welcome. This is the pre-application conference for the Academic Quality and Early Childhood Grants, which are through the Scholarships for Opportunity and Results Act grant. On your screen right now, you should be able to see our agenda for the webinar. So we're going to go over the overview and purpose of the grant, some details of the grant, a little bit about the application submission and what is in the application. We will take some time to actually look in a sample application. We're going to go over how your applications are evaluated, some important dates, and have time for question and answers. So I'm sure that most of you know by now that the SOAR Act grant is part of a three-sector federal funding approach called the Scholarships for Opportunity and Results Act. This is a federal law that authorizes DC public charter schools to improve and expand quality public charter schools in the District of Columbia. The SOAR Act also provides funding for DCPS and also provides funding for the Opportunity Scholarships program, which is the voucher program. So SOAR Act funds for DC charter schools are provided to OSSI through the Department of Education as a grant. And every year we submit an application to the Department of Ed and describe how we will administer those funds. Every year we seek stakeholder feedback, and we sought this feedback last fall before we submitted our application. We submitted our application last year on August 11th, 2017. 2017, and the Department of Ed approved our application and gave us our grant award notification on December 15th. So the overall purpose of SOAR grant funding is to increase the achievement and academic growth of DC public charter school students, to support the improvement and expansion of high-quality public charter schools, and to support DC families by making it easier for them to take advantage of their school choice options. So we are, once again this year, distributing academic quality through a formula grant. It was competitive in the past, but it is formula again this year, which ensures that all of our charters have access to our funds. And based on our stakeholder feedback, we did the same formula as last year, which is everyone got a base grant of $50,000, and then the rest of the funds are distributed on a per pupil basis. The purpose of the academic quality grant is that you must use those funds for projects that are designed to have a direct impact on student achievement. That can be either school-wide student achievement or specific subgroups of students. So you should keep this in mind when you are applying for whatever projects you decide to use the funding for. So we combine our application of the Academic Quality Grant and our Early Childhood Grant. We use the same formula as the Title I grant for the Early Childhood Grant, and the activities under this grant should support quality preschool or pre-K programming or enhance it, and these funds should be used to supplement and not supplant existing programs. So on your screen now is just the citation of the SOAR Act grant as well as the Federal Award Identification Number. You should have received an allocation memo on April 13th. That allocation memo includes what your funding amounts are for both academic quality and early childhood, and to the right of that, you will see who your specific program contact is for your grant. So for the Academic Quality Grant, you were an eligible applicant if you were a charter LEA who was open and serving students during the 2016-17 school year. This does include early childhood and adult education charter LEAs, and so all of the charter LEAs that were open during the 16-17 school year are eligible to submit project proposals for the academic quality portion of that grant program. For early childhood, if you were open and serving students during the 17-18 school year and had a student enrollment that was at least 40% 3- and 4-year-olds and 40% of students who meet the Title I poverty threshold. So we're going to talk a little bit about allowable versus unallowable expenditures. Allowable expenditures are going to be costs that support the project and are linked to evidence-based research. They're going to be costs that have shown to increase academic achievement, that support the project that you've described in your application and through your needs assessment, and costs that meet federal requirements. Things that are unallowable are things that are unallowable per those cost requirements, things that do not align with the strategies that are outlined in your application. And what we mean by that is, for example, if you, in your application you show in your needs assessment that you really need to increase the reading achievement of your English language learners in middle school, and you have as a cost a math professional development for your teachers that doesn't really align with what you've outlined as your need, so that would not be an allowable cost. Costs that do not meet the purpose of this grant would not be allowed, and indirect costs are not allowed through the SOAR grant. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about how to submit your application and what is in it. Very, very important. The application deadline is going to be May 25th, 2018 at 3 p.m. So the submit button actually disappears after 3 o'clock p.m. on May 25th, 2018. And if you have not submitted your application at that time, you will not be allowed to submit your application, and any funds that were allocated to you will be reallocated to any eligible LEAs that met that deadline. Our application is in our Enterprise Grants Management System, or EGMS. Most of you should be familiar with that at this point. There is a link to learn about EGMS. We always suggest that you submit early to avoid any issues. Once again, those applications are due May 25th by 3 p.m. The 3 p.m. deadline ensures that help desk staff here are available to assist anyone who is having any issues. So once again, that deadline is firm. No exceptions are made. to the deadline. So we definitely encourage you to submit earlier in the day to ensure a smooth submission. You're going to get sick of me by the end of this webinar talking to you about that 3 o'clock deadline on May 25th. If you come away with nothing else, I hope it is ingrained in your head that May 25th at 3 p.m. that submit button disappears. So we're going to talk a little bit about what is in the application, and then I'm going to take some time to take you through the application and show you what it looks like. So there is a general information tab. You can find some general information about the grants on this tab. It is informational only. There's nothing for you to complete, but we do suggest that you read through it because there is some good information there for you. The contact information tab is the first tab that you actually have something that you need to fill out. You need to provide contact information for the head of your organization, the head of your LEA, your grant contact, your fiscal contact. Those may be the same people, but we still ask that you fill them out separately. If you have a contact for the grant that is different than your overall grant contact, you would also be able to click and fill out information for the contact person for the specific grant. On the information tab, you'll see that there is a section for you to fill out a brief project description. This should give a very high-level overview of the scope and proposed outcomes. It should be no more than 2 to 3 sentences in length. This could be something as simple as we are going to provide an after-school reading program to students in middle school in order to increase reading achievement scores. The funding distribution tab is also informational and shows a little bit about your funding. There's nothing for you to complete here. Allocations, also informational with no fields to complete. This is going to show you the breakdown of your academic quality funds versus your early childhood funds. If you have both allocations, they'll both be in here. If you only get academic quality funds, then you'll only see academic quality funds listed here. The early childhood would be 0. The main application is going to be the meat and potatoes of your total application. This is where you're going to substantiate the need for your proposed project. So you're going to have a comprehensive needs assessment where you select which data you used for your needs assessment, describe that data, and link it to what you are seeing your need is. The project description is going to describe what project you are going to do and should have a clear link to what you said your need was. The theory of action is going to be an if, then, because statement, and we'll talk a little bit about those when we get into the application. And then there's a performance measures document, and you're going to complete 1 performance measure table per allocation and upload. So only the folks that have both a academic quality allocation and an early childhood application are going to complete 2 of those. So if you only have academic quality, then you're only going to complete 1 table. So just a little note about how to write a successful narrative. You are going to make a clear link between the data that you chose, the need that you found because of that data, what your project is, and research-based strategies. We ask that you be detailed and yet concise. The next tab that you'll see is your detailed planning expenditures. There's going to be a tab for you to summarize the planned uses of your funds. That summary should align your expenditures with the project. And then you have your itemized budget where you provide your detailed expenditures line by line, what you're going to spend. There should be a description for each of those line items, and those items should be permissible uses of funds per federal guidelines, and it should also align with the project that you've described. The budget summary tab summarizes the costs that you've entered in your itemized budget for you. It's automatically populated with the information that you have entered and is for informational purposes. The supporting documentation tab, there is no required supporting documentation for your initial submission. Once your funds are awarded, if you need to make an amendment later, that's when you're going to use the supporting documentation tab, because we do require that you submit a letter of rationale if you need to make an amendment describing what changes you need to make and the reason behind those changes. But for your initial submission, you're not going to have to put anything on the supporting documentation tab. For the assurances, we ask that you read through all the program-specific assurances. Once you've read through them, you would check the box at the top of the page to say that you have read, understood, and will comply with these assurances, and then you're going to click Save Page on the bottom. There's a second Assurances tab. Once you've saved the page on the first Assurances tab, you are going to go to the Assurances Agreement Summary tab, and it'll show the date on which the program-specific assurances were submitted. It's also going to display whether the organization has submitted the Central Data Collection Common Assurances. If you have not completed your drop-down year 2018 Central Data, the GANs will not be released. So once again, the next tab is going to be the Submission tab, and those submissions are due by 3 p.m. on May 25th. You're going to need to run a consistency check and then lock the application, and then you can hit the Submit button. As a reminder, that Submit button disappears after 3 p.m. on May 25th, so you're going to want to avoid technical issues by submitting early. The last tabs in EGMS are the Application Print and Application History tabs. Application Print is available if for any reason you need a hard copy of the application. EGMS generates PDFs once per hour on the hour, so you should keep that in mind. If you do need a hard copy, that you request it, and it is available once an hour on the hour. So if you request it at 9:30, that will be available after 10 o'clock. The application history is informational, and you can see all actions that have been taken involving your application. So before we get into the evaluation of applications, I am going to take you into a sample application to show you some of the things we just talked about. So once again, you can see here that this is the General Information tab. It's got some information. There's not anything that you need to fill out here, but it does contain some information for you. On the Contact Information tab, you are going to fill out the head of school, the grants contact, the fiscal contact, and if you want a point of contact that's different than the grant contact, you would just check the box and you can fill in an additional contact. I also want to point out here that the emails that you enter down here, the head of school will receive email notifications about the application, but if you need to have anyone besides the head of school receiving information about when your application is approved or if it's sent back to you for revisions, you're going to add up to 5 email addresses up here. So you would check this box and you can add up to 5 email addresses besides the head of school. So the Project Overview tab, as we discussed, this is going to be a brief project description, 1 to 2 sentence, very high level overview of what you're going to be doing. The Funding Distribution tab, once again, this is informational. It is going to just talk about how your funds have been distributed to you. Your Allocations tab, also informational. You're going to have your academic quality application, and then if you get one, and also your early childhood allocation, just so that you have a reminder of what the split of funds is. Moving on to the main application tab. Once again, this is the meat and potatoes. You are going to select which data sources you use to perform your needs assessment. There is a list of quantitative as well as qualitative data sources. Whichever you used in your needs assessment, you're going to check those. And then the section below is where you're going to describe each of the data sources that you selected and what the results of those were. So if you selected focus groups, then down here you're going to say what you observed from the focus groups. If you have classroom observations, then in here you would say what came out of those classroom observations, that through classroom observations you noted that teachers were struggling with differentiation or whatever the case may be. If you have something such as graduation rates, then you would list what the graduation rate was. From there, you're going to say, from these data points, we have deduced that our need is, and you can say what specific needs you have found through that needs assessment. Under the project description, you are going to describe what project you are going to do to fulfill those needs and what activities you are going to do within that project. And that project should directly link to the needs that you identified in the needs assessment section, and it should talk about how it's going to have a direct impact on student achievement. If you are receiving both an academic quality and an early childhood allocation, then you need to ensure that your response does address the needs of early childhood students. Under the theory of action, this is an if-then-because statement. So the theory of action is going to say, if we do this project, then we expect to see these results because either research shows that this works or because we have specific evidence of this working at our LEA. It has worked in the past, and we, because of that, we expect to see it work again. So again, this is if we do these activities, if we do this project, then we expect to see these results because research shows that it works, and you're going to cite that research, or you're going to describe specific evidence that you have seen it be successful at your own LEA. The performance measures document. You may remember this from last year. I'm going to show you the performance measures document. The first page of the performance document template is going to give you directions. This has slightly changed from last year. Again, I'm going to send this out as well with your slides at the end of this webinar. But you'll see that we have simplified this slightly. Rather than have an objective and a goal for each of your milestone reporting periods, we are only asking that you give an overall project objective. And we are asking that that objective be a SMART objective, which is described up at the top. Your project objective should be specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-based. And that should be the SMART objective for your overall project. This is going to be a one-year grant, so we expect the project to be 1 year long. And so that's the expectation there. Then the first reporting period is going to be the first 6 months of the award, and reporting period 2 is the second 6 months of the award. So we expect your award period to begin May 25th, since that's the day that the application is due. So for the first 6 months, we would like to know between 3 and 5 activities that you plan to complete in the first 6 months. These activities could be things such as we expect to give 4 professional developments to teachers on reading instruction, and then the completion date is going to be the day that you expect that activity to be finished. For evidence of completion, we want to know what documents you are going to have on hand to show that that activity occurred. So using the example that I just gave of giving 4 professional developments on literacy instruction, some of the evidence of completion that you may list there for something like that would be that you have a professional development calendar, you have PowerPoints that were given during the professional development, and you have sign-in sheets showing that teachers attended the professional development. That would be specific evidence to show that that activity occurred. And once again, you are only required to fill out the top template if you have an academic quality allocation, and the bottom template is just for the early childhood allocation. So going back to our application within EGMS, the next tab, I'm hoping that most of you are very familiar with. It's the Detailed Planning Expenditures tab. This is in every application that you do. The budget overview is informational. The summary of planned expenditures, this is where you are going to summarize the planned uses of funds for all activities. And then we have several tabs to put in your line items, which are salaries and benefits, professional services, equipment, supplies and materials, and other objects. So salaries and benefits. This is going to be anyone who is on your payroll, and this can include obviously their salaries and their benefits, but you would put their name, their title, the program category, and our program categories are instruction. Instruction would be anyone who directly works with students and provides instruction to them. Travel. Support services is indirect to students. So this would be things like professional development. Administration is administration of the grant. It's not administration that you think of when you think of the administration of the school, like the principal. This would be your grant manager. So if you were going to provide a portion of the grant manager's salary so that they can submit your reimbursements and make amendments to your application, that's what administration is. It's administration of the grant. Operations and maintenance is probably not going to be used in this grant. Student transportation is transportation of students, and other is the catch-all. So if something is not instructional, it's not travel, it's not support services, it's not administration, it's not student transportation, it probably falls under other. The rest of the tab, professional services, anything put on that tab should have a signed contract. So if occasionally I will see sometimes people put professional development under professional services. And so one of the big pitfalls is that if you put it under professional services, we expect to see that it's a contracted service, that you have a signed contract between your organization and another organization. So if you put professional development there, but your intention is actually to use it to travel to a conference, it shouldn't be located under professional services. That's something that should actually be located right here in the other tab, because this professional, you probably do not have a contract with a travel agency to purchase tickets. If you do, then it would belong under professional services, but most schools don't have a contract like that. you're not going to have a contract for your registration fees. So make sure that anything that you are placing under professional services is something that you have a signed contract for. Equipment is another one that is a pitfall for some people. Equipment is defined as anything that is over $5,000 per unit. And a lot of times we think of things like computers and cell phones and iPads as equipment. It's actually not. Those technology items would fall under supplies and materials. Things that are under equipment, you probably aren't going to see very many of them, but it's things that are over $5,000 per unit. Supplies and materials, this is going to be anything that is a tangible supply or materials. This is going to be things like that technology. This is going to be things like pens, pencils, books, anything that is tangible. Other objects, again, this is a catch-all tab. This is going to be things like we were talking before about registration fees. This is going to be travel. This is going to be something that is not a tangible supply, that is not a tangible equipment item, that is not a contract, and that is not a salary. So before I move on, I see that I have a question that directly relates to this. What about someone who is overseeing teachers, like a coordinator, but is not necessarily working directly with the students? Would that person's salary go under administration? Once again, administration is someone who is actually administering the grant. So that's going to be someone like a grant person at your school who's actually doing the reimbursements and the amendments. That's going to be someone who's directly administering the funds of the grant. Someone who is overseeing teachers, like a coordinator or a master teacher who's providing them professional development, that's going to be a support service cost. So once again, this budget summary, quickly, for your use to see what your total budget looks like and how much total you have in each category. Supporting documentation is going to be something that you do not need to use for this initial submission. Once again, this tab, the purpose of this tab is if you need to do an amendment after your award for any reason, this is for you to upload a letter of rationale explaining what your changes are and why you need them. The assurances tabs, these are, again, quite important. You're going to read through each of these assurances. You are going to check the box. Because this has already been submitted, there is no button down here, but when you are looking at it, there will be a button right at the bottom here that says Save Page. You are going to need to click that before you move on. The Assurances Agreement Summary is going to show you when you agreed to your common assurances in your central data application. If this date is blank, your application will not be accepted. You will have to go to the central data application to complete this required step, and that central data application is in drop-down year 2018. You should have already filled it out, but you do want to double check that your central data application is approved in drop-down year 2018. And then this date will show you when both the common assurances and the assurances in this application have both been approved. And then there will be a button down here that says Entity Agrees. You will click that, and then you can move on. The Submit button is where you're going to go to submit your application when it is complete. You will run the consistency check and lock the application, and there will be a submit button in which you can submit to Opti. Again, that submit button is going to disappear after 3 o'clock on May 25th. The application history and application print pages. The application history will show you everything that has occurred in your application, and application print is where you would go if you need a hard copy. So what you would do is click to request the print job. The handy thing about this is that when you initially click it, it has every single tab, but if you only want to print the main application, you can actually unclick the other tabs. And then you can hit request print, and that will be printed every hour on the hour. It will generate a PDF for you to be able to print. So we are going to go back into the PowerPoint, and I have a few questions prior to getting into the evaluation. Can you clarify the grant period? The grant period is 1 year, so it's going to be from May 25th of 2018 through May 24th of 2019. And then I have 2 questions about someone is not clear how this grant interfaces with the SOAR grant that was just approved last September. They're asking if this can be a continuation of the SOAR grant or if it has to be different. So this is a completely separate bucket of funds since we apply every year separately. This does not mean that you can't continue the same project. In your needs assessment, if you are continuing the same project, you would have to show that you still have the same need to continue that project, and you would have to show in your project description and in your theory of action that that project is working. So that would be your evidence that this is working and we want to continue doing what we're doing. You can continue to the same project, but you would need to show in your needs assessment and your project description and your theory of action that it's possible that our need is not as great, but our need is not as great because this is working, so we want to continue it. I hope that answers the question. So how are your applications evaluated? There's an internal review panel because this is formula funding, and we assess the quality of each application. We base it on a rubric. We complete the review generally within 2 weeks, and we'll send you back the rubric. If revisions are needed, you have the opportunity to make whatever changes we have requested that you make, and then resubmit for approval. So some important dates. This application, once again, is due May 25th, 2018 by 3 p.m. That submit button will disappear after 3 p.m. and you will not be able to submit after that time. We expect that our initial reviews will be completed 2 weeks from May 25th. And then the grant period will be, once again, from May 25th, 2018 through May 24th, 2019. You will notice once your grant is approved that the grant award notification that you receive will go from May 25th till September 30th of this year. That is not your full award period. That is your grant award notification till the end of this fiscal year. At the end of this fiscal year, you will have until November 15th to submit any reimbursements for any costs that you obligated between May 25th and September 30th. Once you have submitted those costs, we will go through a closeout process, and then you will have a continuation application to do. which consists mainly of just a budget. And once that is complete, you will be issued a GAN for the remainder of your award period. So that will be from October 1st until May 24th of 2019. So that's how the GAN will work. But please know that you do have a full year award period for these funds. So I'm going to have some time now for questions, and I will answer any questions that people have. Not seeing any new ones that have come up in that short amount of time, but if you do have a question, please type it into the question box. Once again, I am going to send the slide deck out along with a copy of the performance measures document at the end of the webinar. The webinar is also being recorded and will be posted on our website in case you have someone else that you feel should listen to it in your organization that was not available today. And while I wait to see if any questions pop up, I am putting the contact information of all of our program analysts that work on this particular grant. So if you're not sure of your program contact, you can go back to that allocation spreadsheet that was sent out last week, find your program contact, and you can ask them any questions. Those will be the people who send you email reminders. Those will be the people that you eventually send your performance agreement document into. Any reporting will be sent to your program contact. Of course, you can always reach out to me for questions. And then I'm also putting up the EGMS help desk. That is an important contact information to have on file. If you do find that you are filling out your application and you get some sort of an error message, or you're having any troubles accessing things within EGMS, you would reach out to the EGMS help desk, and they should be able to help you figure out what the issue is and fix it for you. I have someone asking, is there a mandatory drawdown rate by the end of September? For example, do we need to spend 40% by the end of OSCE's fiscal year? So you actually, as with SOAR grants in the past, and this is in your assurances and will be listed in your GAN, you have 6 months to have a 40% drawdown. So since this starts in May, it would be November that you would have to spend 40%. So I'm not seeing any more questions. I will remain on the line for the next couple of minutes to see if anyone has any questions, which you can always put in the question box. If you do not have any more questions, you are welcome to hop off the webinar. If you find that you have a burning question 20 minutes from now and the webinar has ended, you can always reach out to any of the program analysts listed on this contact information page or myself. If you have a question that pertains to how to use EGMS or error messages that you receive in EGMS, you can reach out to the help desk. I'm not seeing any more go. I'm being asked to clarify the grant period again. So the entire award period is May 25th until of 2018 until May 24th of 2019. And as I said, your your GAN, your initial GAN that you receive, will be from May 25th until September 30th. And once that grant period, or once that's the end of the fiscal year, you'll have till November 15th to submit reimbursements for that portion of the grant. And then you will go through a closeout process, and we will release lots of guidance on how to close out the grant. You will fill out a continuation application, which will just be your remaining budget. And once that is approved, you will receive a grant award notification for the remainder of your funds from October 1st, 2018 through May 24th of 2019. And I only bring that up because I don't want you guys to be alarmed when I'm telling you you have a one-year grant and you get a GAN that says it ends in September 30th of 2018. The full award period is a full year from May 25th until May 24th of next year. Okay, so I'm not seeing any more questions. I'm going to go ahead and close the webinar. Once again, if you have a burning question 20 minutes from now, you can always reach out to me. I'm getting one more question. If we want to expand an existing program that we currently have under SOAR, can we use this grant for the expansion? You would be able to use the grant for the expansion, but once again, you would need to clarify in your needs assessment what the need is. You would need to link your project to that need, and you would need to show in your theory of action that the existing SOAR program has been successful. So you would have to cite data that you have showing that has been successful, so that you can show how it is likely to succeed that you are expanding the program. Okay, so once again, not seeing any other questions right now. I am going to go ahead and close the webinar. If you have a burning question 20 minutes from now, feel free to reach out directly via email, and we are happy to answer any questions that you have. We are also happy to answer any questions about allowability anytime down the line as you're filling out your grant application. And thank you for spending an hour of your morning with me. I appreciate it. And I hope that you have a great rest of your day and upcoming weekend. Hopefully the weather gets a little bit warmer soon. So yeah, have a great day, guys. Thank you.